Founder and CEO of Fastcall, and I'm going to talk for a few minutes about our data model. This is a fairly deep uh, topic and is essentially the core of the application is data. And I'm starting here in the App Exchange because I think it's a good place to start. As you're looking through our App Exchange listing, and Salesforce will also show you this when the application is installed, you'll see under package contents, Salesforce says custom objects. Well, what are custom objects? In essence, they are our data model, developer's data model. Um, in our case, as a native application, all of our data is in Salesforce, so all of our logged call information will be in multiple custom objects. So let's go into the org, and we'll see that we're in a Salesforce report. We do package many different reports. This is a sample report of calls, connections, attempts, and that is the core of our call data model. We also log SMS and some other details about a call, which I can go in a few minutes. But you'll notice that there is a call. A call can have multiple connections, and a connection can have multiple attempts. I think there were some attempts down here. There we are. So we can see. So for example, if a call comes in, an inbound call um, comes into an IVR and has a connection to a group, each user in the group will create an attempt. If a user answers the call, we'll see the attempt is answered. The other attempts would be not answered. Um, and then if the call is transferred, you're going to see another connection and possibly more attempts underneath the same call. So there's a parent-child relationship between calls and um, and connections. And if we log into the call record, we'll see because the object is custom, every field on the record is going to be a custom field. So um, this is the custom record for calls. The specific page layout will be customized by you. Any page layout updates are controlled by the Salesforce admin. So what I'm seeing on this demo org for page layouts can be different than what you may have. You may notice that we have uh, a player here for the recorded call. You'll see that all these fields are custom fields, and how you specifically will organize these custom fields will really be up to you. In this case, you'll notice that there was um, a uh, a reply call record. So this is actually an outbound call that was a reply to an inbound call that was missed. So this is part of our data model, though the reply call is also a call record. Details about the call here, again, your specific setup may may differ, and the specific details of what you're going to find on the custom object are detailed in our support documents. But of course, you're going to see the start time and end time for the call. There's a call type, call status, the phone number that was dialed, of course, the name of the record. Um, in this particular example, we are showing the call recording URL. We do actually suggest that you remove the call recording URL from the page layout, or at least some specific roles, so that end users may not see the call recording URL and instead review a recorded call in the player so that they are staying in Salesforce. We think this is a more secure delivery. I'm an admin. I do have the call recording on this particular page layout. Of course, there's a lookup to the contact that was dialed. You'll see that we are creating a Salesforce activity, and there's a lookup on this call record for the Salesforce activity. There's a lookup for the connection. If there was an attempt, we'd see that. This again, we see the lookup to the reply call. Interactions is another custom object that is telling us what's happening inside of an IVR. So those are the interactions within an IVR. We do have the option to create a Salesforce task. When the application is installed, we are not creating any custom fields on the Salesforce task, and I'll show that in a few minutes. You have the option to not create a Salesforce task, but if you do create a Salesforce task, we're not creating a new custom field, which is the cleanest way um, to um, to install an application that uses a standard object like activities or tasks. I'll go over that in a minute. So custom object, again, we have a call. There was a reply call. So this was the inbound call that was missed um, with a reply call that we had created, the connection, and then if there was a specific attempt, would look here, there was a connection attempt. So the data models calls connections attempts. Here's the Salesforce task. Salesforce task, of course, is standard Salesforce object. We are not creating any custom fields on the Salesforce task during the installation. That happens post installation. I'll show you that in a second. And again, is optional, and the specific page layout, of course, is also optional. So there's the Salesforce task. There's our custom data model. So let's go look at our settings. Probably a good place to go from here. So inside of our settings, we have a section called logging, which is where all of our call logging starts. So there are call results, and some of these are focused on the Salesforce task, such as the call results, though call results will also be set on in the custom data model. So call results subject, which is a standard field on task. So right here, so we see under tasks, the first thing you see is there's an option to not create a task, and you can remove that. And then there are some subtask task options for when you are creating a task. And then here, which is important, so this is where we are mapping fields to the Salesforce task, and we do this so that when the package is installed, again, we're not creating any custom fields on the Salesforce task, which is the cleanest way for a partner to deliver an application. So in order to create the lookup between the call and the task, you're going to map the field to the call, and inside the application, these will all be empty when you're first installing the application. You'll have the option to the option will say Fastcall will create this field for you, because these are all custom fields, so you're not going to see any. They won't exist in your org. The from number and to number could possibly exist in your org, and if you map the from number to an existing field that you have on task, you don't have to get a new field, and that also would be able to maintain any previous reporting. Same is true with call recording. So if you had some previous reporting with call recording, um, you could map the fields so that you're reusing the field. Usually, if it happens to be a different field type, then this has to be a URL. Um, but if it's the same field type, you can. So anyway, this is the way that we install the application without creating any new fields. But they will be created after you map those fields. There's some pick lists for tasks, not really related to the data model. So this is again where we are creating new fields on task. We have our data model. We're also creating, and those are under. We have another section, and there's another training section under managed objects. I'm going to mention it here. So our managed objects has also a little bit to do with our custom data model, in that you are setting objects in the application that will be managed by Fastcall, and that does a few things. It manages lookup for inbound calls. It enables the outbound dial by list, but it also enables, it says up here, it also will create that lookup between the call and the object. You'll see, of course, the standard objects you have for contact, account, lead. You can add a custom object, so here. And this is going to create the lookup relationship between the object and the custom records, custom objects for calls. But the other thing it's going to do is it's going to create some metadata, which you have the option to list on the record, or you can block it, which is here. So if you see, if I click on any detail here, and this relates to the custom data model because you're going to see that data on the record. So if I come in here, and this was a contact, I think I actually need a lead. So if I look at a lead, doesn't really matter. If I look on a lead record, Fastcall is creating some call metadata. And in this particular case, I have them all added to the page layout. Again, it would be up to you as the Salesforce admin to add these fields to the page layout, but you'll see that I have a call count, inbound, outbound. I didn't really put these in order. Outbound, first call date, last call date. So this is some additional metadata that um, is created after the package is installed. And if you want this on the page layout, you can add it. If you don't want it on the page layout, you don't add it, but it's part of the custom data model because it is optionally fields that we are adding to your org, in this case, post install. So we include that in the custom data model. I did mention that you do have the ability to block these record updates because we discussed this in the learning section on manage objects. There is certain cases where you might not want that data added to the object. So when you're talking about the data model, manage objects has something to do with the data model because it's going to create the relationship between calls and the record. There's reports, which are going to give you reports of both of calls, connections, attempts, but also your reports of your Salesforce task, which you probably already have. And in that case, you may or may not be adding a custom field to the Salesforce, a report of a Salesforce task, for example, the to phone number or the from phone number. You might add those to an existing report of your Salesforce tasks or activities. So there would only be really be a small edit to an existing report to add some details and data about your calls. So there's reports, settings, and then we talked about um, the settings that are here under call logging under tasks. I did mention, probably worth repeating again, we always create the call records. The call records are only created in your org. There is no data that goes outside of Salesforce. We are a native application. We will always create a call connection attempts. Um, there's a custom object for voicemail. There's a custom object for SMS. Matter of fact, worth showing that in a second. The option to create a task is optional, but there is always going to be a call record. So here's another example. We talked about reports. Here's another example of calls are an object. So we can create a list view. So I'm often asked about how do we present data for calls. There are multiple ways because these are ultimately Salesforce objects. So I can have Salesforce reports. I can have Salesforce list views. So here's a list view. As a matter of fact, we have a list view of planned calls, which we discuss under our learning section under um, call goals and plan calls, but I can create a list view of calls. In this case, these are planned calls for outbound calls. We do surface our calls, of course, here in the application. So I'm going to see a call here in the application, and I can come into a call here in the application. I can click here, which is going to take me to the Salesforce task. So I'm surfacing, I'm navigating from the application to the Salesforce task. And again, the page layout is up to you, but I have a link to the call record from the Salesforce task, so I can go from the application. Again, the player for the recorded call. I can go from the application to the task to the call. Um, we do have a control panel that is going to show us our calls. And in this interface, we're going to see calls that are in real time. So either calls that might be holding on the IVR or calls that are in real time, and that's where we enable listen in. So we're surfacing your ability to see calls in different ways because ultimately they are a Salesforce object, and I can manage those Salesforce objects in different ways. And another one of those is this interaction component, which is a Lightning uh, component. I think I may have some more data here. So in the interaction component, we are surfacing a threaded component of both calls and SMS. So we are visualizing and presenting data in many different ways. So in the interaction component, we do it in Salesforce Mobile. We're doing it here in the application, which is OpenCTI, in a list view from the object. Here's a list view of SMS. Um, reports. So that's our data model. I feel like I've missed lots of important details. I hope not, because this really is, of all the areas of our application, this is the deepest and it is the crux of the application, really the crux of all sales. It's data, right? So it's the deepest and probably most important part of the application. But it is, I think, ultimately important to know. I think it is ultimately important to know that these are all Salesforce objects and can be manipulated as any Salesforce object uh, might might be. Okay, so hopefully this was helpful. Send us an email at help@fastcall.com with any additional questions, and we'll be happy to help you from there.